At 60 years old, PawnStars legend Rick Harrison appears to have everything. A life built on fame, fortune, and a legacy rooted in history itself. Yet, behind that calm and confident smile lies a story that few truly know. Beneath the bright lights and playful banter of television, Rick has faced a series of heartbreaking challenges, from early struggles and broken marriages to unexpected family betrayals. His life, though admired by millions, has been marked by pain that remained hidden behind the camera's glare. But nothing in his journey could have prepared him for the tragedy that would one day shatter his world and forever change how fans see him. The Boy Who Dreamed in Books. Rick Harrison's story begins in the small town of Lexington, North Carolina, where he was born on March 22, 1965. His parents, Richard Benjamin, the Old Man, Harrison and Joanne Rue Harrison, would later become beloved figures to millions of television viewers. Yet long before fame or fortune arrived, Rick's early life was shaped by obstacles that forced him to grow resilient and independent in a world that didn't always make things easy. When Rick was only 8 years old, his life took a dramatic turn. He began suffering from epileptic seizures that kept him confined to bed for long stretches of time. While other children were outside riding bikes or playing games, Rick was stuck indoors, uncertain when his body might betray him again. But those quiet, lonely hours turned out to be the birthplace of something extraordinary. Seeking an escape, Rick turned to books, devouring everything he could get his hands on, especially history books. He became fascinated by stories of ancient civilizations, lost treasures, and the brilliant inventions that shaped humanity. It was during these formative years that he discovered his lifelong love for history and the magic hidden within objects that carried pieces of the past. Rick would later describe himself as a complete geek, lost in a world of trivia, history, and curiosity. Those pages became his window to freedom, taking him far beyond his room, out to sea with explorers, into ancient cities buried under dust, and across the centuries of human discovery. It was there that his mind began to gather not just knowledge, but a fascination with the tangible artifacts that could tell stories in ways words never could. In 1967, Rick's father's career in the U.S. Navy brought the Harrison family to San Diego, California, marking a new chapter. Living near the ocean sparked his curiosity, but school never quite captured his interest. By the time he reached high school, he struggled to stay motivated by lessons that felt disconnected from the real world. Eventually, Rick dropped out in the 10th grade, a decision that could have limited his future. But instead, it set him on a new path fueled by ambition, grit, and a sharp instinct for opportunity. By 16, Rick had already started hustling. He began selling fake Gucci bags, earning as much as $2,000 a week. Though it wasn't exactly a noble trade, it revealed something deeper: his natural business instincts, his understanding of people's desires, and his willingness to take bold risks. These qualities would become the foundation of his future success. Even before his teenage ventures, by the age of 13, Rick was already working alongside his father in a small coin shop. During the day, he learned how to evaluate items and deal with customers. At night, he joined his father in repossessing cars, an experience that introduced him to the tougher, more unforgiving side of business. These early years were not easy, but they gave Rick lessons that no classroom ever could. What truly kept him moving forward was his dream. Rick didn't just want to buy and sell things, he wanted to bring history to life. He imagined a place where stories and commerce would meet, where every object on a shelf carried whispers of the past. He dreamed of building something lasting, a shop where his passion for history and his talent for deal-making could finally unite. As Rick entered his late teens, his restless ambition collided with the sudden reality of adult life. His days of quick hustles gave way to urgent responsibility when he became a father at a very young age. He later admitted that the experience forced him to end idiocy and grow up fast. The carefree teenager who once thrived on instinct and street smarts suddenly had people depending on him. Rick married his first wife, Kim, and together they welcomed 2 sons, Corey in 1983 and Adam in 1985. Parenthood at such a young age was not easy. Dreams had to take a back seat to survival, and there was no room for excuses. Rick worked tirelessly to provide for his family, describing that period as a blur of risk, work, and endless bills. By then, his father, the old man, had opened a small second-hand and coin shop in Las Vegas in 1981. It was only about 300 square feet, hardly impressive, but it was a start. Rick spent long hours helping at the shop, learning not only the mechanics of buying and selling, but also how to read people, their hopes, their desperation, and their hidden treasures. Every item that crossed the counter had a story, and every story held potential. The road wasn't smooth. The Harrisons struggled through moves, bad leases, and weeks when the business barely broke even. Las Vegas, a city built on luck, was an unforgiving place for small businesses. Rick spent his days surrounded by coins, antiques, and odd items, and his nights chasing extra work to keep food on the table. Through those challenges, Rick's early fascination with history evolved into strategy. The same lessons he had learned from reading about wars and great leaders now shaped his approach to business. He saw negotiation as a kind of battle, one fought not with weapons, but with tone, patience, and confidence. The pressure of fatherhood, financial struggle, and nonstop work would have crushed many, but Rick treated each challenge as a problem to solve. His father valued caution and long-term stability, while Rick had a hunger for risk and innovation. Though they occasionally clashed, their differences created balance and ultimately built a foundation for what was to come. The tiny shop that sometimes seemed on the edge of failure would eventually become the cornerstone of a global phenomenon. Each customer who walked in carried a bit of history in their hands, and Rick recognized that history could be transformed into opportunity. Those long, difficult years became his training ground, shaping the man he would become, a blend of dreamer, hustler, and historian. By 1989, after years of relentless work and learning, Rick was ready to take the biggest leap of his life. Together with his father, he opened the gold and silver pawn shop at 713 Las Vegas Boulevard South, just a short distance from the glittering chaos of the Las Vegas Strip. It was more than a store. It was the physical realization of everything Rick had dreamed about since childhood. Getting a pawn shop license, however, was no easy task. A 1955 Las Vegas law strictly limited new pawn licenses based on population size. Most people would have given up, but Rick wasn't like most people. Determined, he visited the city statistician's office every week, watching the numbers climb until the population finally reached the threshold. The moment it did, he and his father filed their application and secured the license that would change their lives forever. The gold and silver pawn shop started modestly, but quickly built a reputation. It was truly a family business. Rick, his father, and eventually his son Corey worked side by side. They handled everything from small loans to rare collectibles, and soon, the shop became a magnet for fascinating people and extraordinary items. It wasn't just about money. It was about stories, history, and connection. By the mid-2000s, the shop had grown far beyond anyone's expectations. Reports show that by 2005, they were loaning out around $3 million a year and earning about $700,000 in interest income. What had started as a small family venture had evolved into a thriving empire, and the stage was quietly being set for a television series that would make the Harrison family household names around the world. For a business that began in a cramped little coin shop, the gold and silver pawn shop's rise was nothing short of astonishing. Yet for Rick Harrison, success was never a cue to slow down or take a victory lap. He viewed it instead as the start of something much bigger, a foundation on which he could build a legacy. Around this period, Rick earned a nickname that captured his talent perfectly: the Spotter. The title came from his remarkable ability to identify fakes, recognize genuine value, and close deals that most others would have walked away from. Whether it was a Civil War rifle, a rare championship ring, or a signed album, Rick's sharp eye for authenticity set him apart. What many saw as luck was actually the product of decades spent studying, observing, reading, and learning to listen to the stories that both people and objects silently tell. if you know where to look. Under Rick's guidance, the gold and silver pawn shop evolved from a simple local business into something of a landmark. It became a destination for collectors, travelers, and the merely curious, each person walking in with hopes of buying, selling, or trading something with history attached. The store's shelves gradually became a museum of Rick's lifelong fascination with the past. Every item that crossed his counter carried a story, a small fragment of time that had witnessed lives, conflicts, and memories before ending up in his hands. Even as the business grew, Rick never distanced himself from the hard work that built it. He still oversaw inventory, put in long hours on the shop floor, and even handled repossessions when needed. Success brought pride, but also pressure, especially with 3 generations of Harrisons working side by side. There were occasional flare-ups and disagreements, but love and loyalty always anchored the family together. Through it all, Rick's ambitions reached beyond money. He was determined to create something lasting, something that would survive changing times, financial ups and downs, and even his own lifetime. When Hollywood eventually came knocking, Rick's world would expand beyond anything he could have imagined. But fame, as he would soon learn, never comes without a price. In July 2009, everything changed for Rick Harrison and his family. The History Channel premiered PawnStars, a reality show that took viewers inside the day-to-day life of the gold and silver pawn shop. The cast featured Rick, his father, the old man, his son Corey, and Corey's lifelong friend Austin Chumley Russell. Almost overnight, the once quiet family business was thrust into the national spotlight. Audiences were instantly drawn to the show's unique mix of humor, family banter, and the endless stream of historical treasures passing through the shop's doors. What began as a modest reality show about pawning and negotiation exploded into a cultural phenomenon. Within months, PawnStars became the highest-rated series on the History Channel and the second most-watched reality show in the United States, just behind Jersey Shore. Rick quickly stood out for his sharp intelligence, calm authority, and quick wit. His deep knowledge of history and his skill in negotiation, once confined to a dusty Las Vegas counter, were now being broadcast to millions across the globe. Overnight, Rick Harrison became a household name, recognized everywhere he went. For years, Rick had dreamed of sharing his passion for history and storytelling, and now the world was listening. Lines formed outside the shop as fans waited for autographs, selfies, or a chance to appear on the show. The gold and silver pawn shop, once struggling to stay afloat, had become a major tourist destination drawing people from around the world. What began as a humble family venture built on risk and grit had transformed into an international brand. In 2011, Rick added author to his list of accomplishments with the release of his memoir License to Pawn, Deals, Steals, and My Life at the Gold and Silver. The book climbed to number 22 on the New York Times bestseller list. In it, Rick shared his remarkable journey from a curious young hustler and bookworm to a successful entrepreneur and television personality. Readers were drawn to his honesty, humor, and the candid truths he revealed about building a life from scratch. As PawnStars continued to dominate television ratings, Rick's influence expanded well beyond the small screen. He invested in real estate, launched side ventures, and became a regular guest on talk shows and news programs. Fame had opened countless doors, but it also brought pressures few could imagine. The lights and cameras could not conceal the toll that constant exposure was taking on his personal life. Rick's first marriage to Kim, the mother of his sons Corey and Adam, had ended years before. He married Tracy Ann Hill in 1987, but that relationship too ended in 2011, the same year his book was published. In 2013, he married Deanna Burdett, but that union ended around 2020. The man who once defined himself by his family business now saw his private life becoming as public as his work. Rick often admitted that fame was both a blessing and a burden. The relentless filming schedules, media obligations, and business responsibilities left him little time to breathe. While he was grateful for the success, the constant scrutiny was draining. Yet, the same persistence that had helped him build an empire now helped him maintain his balance amid chaos. Through all the challenges, Rick never lost sight of what truly mattered: the shop, the customers, and the stories behind every item. Fame had magnified his world, but it hadn't changed his heart. To him, each antique, coin, or collectible still held a story worth uncovering. But just as he began to find stability again, life struck him with a blow no amount of fame could soften. On June 25, 2018, Rick Harrison faced one of the hardest days of his life. His father, Richard the Old Man Harrison, passed away at the age of 77 after a long battle with Parkinson's disease. The loss was far deeper than the pain of losing a parent. Rick had lost his mentor, his business partner, and the guiding presence behind every major decision he had ever made. The old man wasn't just part of the shop's story, he was its foundation. For decades, Rick and his father had worked side by side, sharing jokes, debating deals, and occasionally butting heads over methods and money. Their bond became one of PawnStars' greatest charms, the generational balance of wisdom and ambition that viewers around the world loved. When the old man passed, it felt as though the heartbeat of the shop had changed forever. Suddenly, Rick bore not only the weight of the business, but also the responsibility of preserving his father's legacy. Even in grief, the show went on. The gold and silver pawn shop had long since outgrown its local roots, becoming a global brand and major tourist destination. By 2012, according to Kittle, daily visitors had jumped from 70 to over 700, a clear sign of the show's cultural reach. Fans came from all over just to see Rick, Chumlee, or Corey, and to step inside the store that had become iconic on television. Behind the scenes, however, Rick was struggling to balance his grief with the pressure of keeping everything running. The cameras rolled, the customers kept coming, but the absence of his father was deeply felt. Every corner of the shop carried memories, the laughter, the advice, the comfort of shared purpose. Without his father, even success felt different. Meanwhile, the pawn industry itself was evolving. The rise of online marketplaces made it easier for collectors to buy and sell, changing the dynamics of the trade. Fewer people needed traditional pawn loans, and the rise of streaming platforms pulled audiences away from cable TV. But Rick understood what survival demanded: adaptation. Drawing on his lifelong love of history, he recognized that endurance requires flexibility, just as civilizations and empires survive only by evolving without losing their essence. Still, every day he walked past the empty space where his father once sat, and memories flooded back. The old man's lessons about honesty, hard work, and knowing the true worth of things and people continued to shape Rick's every move. Through change and sorrow, he kept those values alive, greeting visitors and sharing stories that made the gold and silver pawn shop what it was. After losing his father, Rick soon found himself facing new battles, this time within his own family. His divorce from Deanna Burdett around 2020 marked another painful turning point. Though their split was quiet, it left behind exhaustion and heartache. For all his business wisdom, Rick could not negotiate his way through emotional loss. Just as he refocused on PawnStars and the shop, another storm erupted. In 2022, Rick's mother, Joanne, filed a lawsuit claiming that he had taken control of her 51% ownership in the pawn shop while she was ill, restricting her access to records and payments. The allegations shocked fans who had long admired the Harrison family for their unity and trust. For Rick, it was a devastating moment. The man who had built his career on honesty, loyalty, and family values now found himself at the center of a painful public dispute. The story of a devoted son honoring his father's memory was suddenly overshadowed by reports of family conflict. Behind his calm, composed public demeanor, Rick was privately struggling. The lawsuit forced him to balance his roles as both businessman and son. The emotional cost was heavy. There was no expert to appraise this kind of loss, no deal to close, no easy truth to uncover. Fans who had watched the Harrisons for over a decade were stunned to see the family facing turmoil that no reality show could script. The shop stayed busy, and the cameras kept rolling, but Rick's world felt different. His triumphs were now shadowed by tension and personal pain. The man who spent his life valuing history was now living through a chapter of his own that would test every lesson he had ever learned about perseverance. In January 2024, Rick Harrison endured the most unbearable loss a father can experience. His son Adam, just 39 years old, passed away from an overdose involving fentanyl and methamphetamine. Though Adam had once worked at the pawn shop, he chose to live outside the public eye and never appeared on PawnStars. His death left Rick shattered. When Rick later spoke about the tragedy, his words were filled with raw pain. "When you lose a kid, you second-guess everything." That simple sentence revealed the depth of his sorrow, the endless questions, the quiet guilt, the haunting emptiness that success can never fill. For a man who had built his life around appraising value, this loss taught him that some things can never be measured. Adam's death forced Rick to look inward and re-examine his life, not as a celebrity or businessman, but as a father. The overdose epidemic that had devastated families nationwide had now touched his own. No amount of money, fame, or control could undo what had happened. In interviews, Rick spoke of how grief doesn't fade, it only changes shape. It becomes something you learn to carry, silently, day after day. Though his heart was broken, Rick continued to work. PawnStars remained on the air, and he still greeted fans and filmed episodes with quiet strength. Yet those who watched closely noticed a shift, a deeper calm, a gentler tone behind the humor. The once fiercely analytical negotiator now carried the quiet wisdom of a man who had known profound loss. The gold and silver pawn shop now stands as more than a symbol of success. It's a monument to everything Rick has lived through: the death of his father, the pain of family conflict, and the heartbreaking loss of his son. Behind the bright lights and cameras is a man still searching for meaning, still showing up despite the weight he carries. Rick has said that tragedy forced him to rethink what truly matters. The fame, the fortune, the television legacy, all of it fades compared to love and family. Yet through his grief, Rick embodies something quietly heroic: resilience. He reminds others that even when life breaks you, it's still possible to keep moving forward, to find purpose again, no matter how heavy the pain. Today, the world still sees Rick Harrison as the confident, sharp-minded pawnbroker, the man who can spot authenticity at a glance. But behind that steady presence is a heart that has endured unimaginable loss and continues every day to choose perseverance over despair. His story is a reminder that even the brightest stars often shine through the darkest nights. Even after facing unimaginable personal pain, Rick Harrison never allowed himself to disappear into grief. Each morning, he still walks through the doors of the gold and silver pawn shop, the same place where his dreams began decades ago in that small, cluttered coin shop. The walls, once echoing with laughter shared with his father, now carry the weight of memories. Yet for Rick, being there remains a form of therapy. Surrounded by the relics of history, he finds reminders that life, like the antiques he handles, is marked by wear, but never without worth. Visitors who step inside the shop today often see the familiar TV personality smiling for photos and greeting fans. What they don't always see is the quiet reflection behind his eyes, the part of him that still wrestles with loss but chooses to channel it into strength. Each deal he makes, every story he tells, now holds deeper meaning. He doesn't just appraise the value of items anymore. He finds lessons in them about time, endurance, and the fragile beauty of human experience. Over the years, PawnStars has become more than a show about buying and selling. It's become a chronicle of perseverance. Through every episode, audiences have watched Rick and his team navigate laughter, tension, success, and sorrow. Behind the humor and negotiations lies the universal truth that life, like history, is never simple. It's made of victories and heartbreaks, of things we gain and things we lose. Rick's influence extends beyond television screens. He has used his platform to promote historical awareness, encouraging people to see the value in preservation and storytelling. He often reminds his fans that history isn't just found in books or museums. It lives in the items we inherit, the memories we pass down, and the lessons we learn from those who came before us. For Rick, every object that passes through his hands is a piece of someone's legacy, a fragment of time that deserves to be respected and understood. Even as fame reshaped his life, Rick never let it alter his values. He continues to credit his success to discipline, honesty, and the guidance his father instilled in him. The old man may be gone, but his principles remain embedded in every corner of the shop. Employees still talk about him with reverence, and fans still recall his dry wit and sharp wisdom. His presence lingers not just in the show's memories, but in the way Rick runs the business, with fairness, precision, and a deep appreciation for the past. The passing years have also softened Rick's perspective on success. Once driven by ambition and the thrill of negotiation, he now speaks more about gratitude and balance. He knows that fortune can fade and fame can be fleeting, but the relationships built along the way, the family, friends, and loyal fans, are what endure. Even after enduring heartbreak that might have crushed another person, Rick continues to face each day with quiet determination. In recent interviews, Rick has reflected on how life has changed him. He acknowledges that pain has a way of shaping people, forcing them to find new strength in places they never expected. Losing his father, enduring public legal battles, and the devastating death of his son all transformed him from a man focused on deals to one who values moments more than money. He's learned that true wealth isn't in gold or silver. It's in love, legacy, and resilience. The gold and silver pawn shop still stands proudly on Las Vegas Boulevard, a testament to hard work, history, and the human spirit. Tourists continue to line up outside, drawn by curiosity, nostalgia, or the hope of meeting the man who turned his family's small business into a piece of American television history. To many, it's just a pawn shop. To Rick Harrison, it's a living monument to his family's journey, the triumphs, the tragedies, and the lessons carved into time. Rick's story serves as a powerful reminder that success never comes without sacrifice. Behind the smiles, the fame, and the carefully negotiated deals lies a man who has endured heartbreak and loss, yet continues to push forward. His resilience proves that even when life's treasures are taken away, there's still meaning to be found in what remains. Through it all, Rick Harrison's journey echoes one timeless message. History isn't just about the past, it's about endurance. It's about surviving change, carrying the lessons of loss, and finding strength in stories, both old and new. And though fame may fade and the spotlight may dim, the legacy Rick has built, rooted in love, perseverance, and the pursuit of truth, will continue to shine for generations to come.